with people on ideas to bring Omega into the 21st century. Is that right? I'm the 21st century? No, not the 20th century. Yeah. This is the 21st. Okay. So the 21st century. So we're going to be more socially media aware. I have no idea what it is, but they do. So apparently I'm going to pop on the phone and talk to people about things that, you know, I'm going for a bike ride. Hey, I've been thinking about, anyway, I guess that's things that happen. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you know, stuff. So that'll be one thing. I am kind of excited about this idea. We were talking about it. I know that lately I've been seeing celebrities doing fundraisers, and they'll do like, buy tickets and you can, you know, meet, like Hugh Grant had them fly to London and remember the movie Notting Hill? Love that movie. So he flew and they walked the streets of Notting Hill, whoever won. And then Julia Roberts did a really funny one with Rodeo Drive shopping for Pretty Woman. That was good. Kevin Bacon and Kira Sidgwick, his wife, they flew people out to New York and did dinner and dancing because he was in the dancing movie. So the idea was, maybe do lunch or dinner conversations with Anne-Marie for a night or something like that. I was actually thinking about it would be neat to do a trip to Sedona, but you know, I don't know who would win, and I don't want to be trapped in a car. I'm kidding. That's when I would actually pick the winner. Oh, you won. Look, my husband won. Just kidding. But those are things that we've been thinking about doing, some fundraising things. I know in the past, Omega stuck to the idea of not fundraising, but we had a board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the board decided, you know, we need to get up with the times, and fundraisers really are things that help. And so as long as it's done tastefully and not taking advantage of anyone, and, you know, back in the day when, I want to say this is back in 89 or 88, Shirley Karras bought a building for us. It was completely empty, and she rented it to us for only like $1,500 a month. Beautiful, huge building. And we had to build it up from the inside out. It was just an empty shell. And they did do an auction. They had an auction where people, like a silent auction, so people donated airline tickets and cars. I mean, they just had a whole bunch of stuff. They raised, I want to say it was $150,000, and then there was a gentleman in New Jersey who matched it. Said, whatever you raise, I will match it, and he did. So in one event, they raised close to $300,000. So there have been times when there has been doing some fundraising. So the board approved it, we're open to doing it. So we will keep you posted, but that's like in the main, I just want you to think we're not just sitting around twiddling our thumbs waiting. So there's things that we've been contemplating. I also will be publishing, I've decided I'll go back to, I did this once before, I'm going to publish all the topics for all the Monday night workshops for the year, for 2019. So in January, it will be published, I don't know how it works, but Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, as well as our newsletter. It'll give all the topics for the Monday night workshops so that you'll be able to choose when you decide you want to come down and visit us, as well as the videos being posted on YouTube. I know that's a way to make money as well. Like if you get enough followers on YouTube, they pay for advertising or something. So it's a whole new world out there. I just feel like lost most of the time. But I'm grateful that we have, that was awfully loud, I'm sorry. I'm grateful that we have people who are involved in this, like the next generation. We were talking about the idea how, for us, simple things like breathing or, you know, remember to, like tonight's topic, step in someone's shoes. That's something we all grew up with, but like the next generation, this is new to them. They've never heard the idea. What do you mean walk in someone's shoes? So, like, to me, I think it's great to reach out to the next generation to introduce them to things that we've already been familiar with in our lives. So anyway, that would take care of that. I'm on the fence about whether or not I want to do a New Year's Day program. We did that last year. I'm on the fence about it. I might probably still do it. Oh, and one other final thing. The book of the months that I've been recommending, the book recommendations this month, I did The Present by Spencer Johnson. What we'll start doing in January is meeting at the end of the month to discuss the book. And I'm going to pick simpler books. as well as throughout the month, I will pop on the phone and have a conversation about some of the topics that are in, like if you reach page 67, here's what the author is talking about, something along that lines. So starting in January, we will be doing a meet and greet, I don't know what we're going to call it yet, but a meet and greet for the book reviews, like a book club. And the idea was people had said that we could do like a $10 ticket to sit in a coffee house somewhere and just chat, and that would be a way to raise a little bit money too. So it'd be like the idea of like you'd be sitting with me one-on-one for an hour and discussing the books that we would recommend. So at that, I would throw this out to all of you watching as well as everyone here. If there's any particular topics you're interested in or any books that you would like to read but never really got around to it or curious about, send us an email or send us a tweet. I don't mean to sound so goofy, but I don't know what you do, but send in. I want to say send an email, but I know emails aren't used as much anymore. Do you know it's really funny that this generation doesn't like to leave voicemails? Like if you don't answer your phone, they do not leave you a voicemail. They send you a text. Hey, I just called, you didn't answer. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, leave the voice. And sometimes the texts are so long that the bubbles are out of order, and then you have to kind of scroll up and down to figure out how to follow the conversation. Have you had that? I had a 10-bubble thing pop in because the text was so long, and I couldn't figure out how I actually printed it so I can figure what goes where and read it. It's very funny. But anyway, so those are some of the things I'm excited about starting for 2019. So tonight's topic, and then of course, naturally, I didn't mention that the Wednesday workshop, which will be in 2 weeks on the 19th of December, we're going to talk about, I know it, the pros and cons of desire. We're going to talk about that, and that will be just a Facebook Live one, so there's no attendance on that one. So tonight's topic, Mark, did I leave anything else out? I've got everything there? Okay, great. Tonight's topic is, are you willing to wear my shoes? I played along with the line of walking in someone's shoes. The actual idiom is, if you walk in a man's shoes for a mile, oh my gosh.
Walk a mile in a man's shoes.
Thank you. Walk a mile in a man's shoes, you're least likely to judge them. I paraphrased that, but that's the idea. Walking a mile in someone else's shoes gives you the perception of what their life is like. In other words, it shuts down our judgment. So I was thinking of this, and Dr. Wayne Dyer has a great quote. He says, real magic in relationships means an absence of judgment of others. I like that, the idea that magic. I was recently asked, how do you get a relationship to sustain? You know, what is it? What are the secrets of having a good relationship? And I really think a lack of judgment is very beneficial. When you have judgment of your spouse or significant other, it's difficult because then it ties into emotions and expectations and reactions, and we take things personal. So if we can remove the judgments, the criticisms of one another, we probably have a little bit more of an effective relationship, a productive relationship, a deeper, loving relationship. I was reading some comments by, on Facebook sometimes they have like celebrities' thoughts on this or something. So there was this one where they talked about celebrities, the celebrities who's lasted the longest in Hollywood, which is, unheard of. So there's one couple that have been married for 27 years. The one I'm thinking of is, the names are forgotten. But anyway, I do remember this. Julia Roberts said one of the things that she considers as the benefit to the relationship is kiss as often as you can. Just keep kissing the person to ensure that they know you love them and that they love you. Laughing, Kevin Bacon and Kira talked about laughing with one another, making sure they go out and laugh. And of course, we also know the idea of going on a date night with the person. And if you have kids, make sure you go on a time away from your children so that you can rekindle the relationships. I'm not here tonight to talk about relationships, but I am here to discuss the idea of what happens if we truly do understand walking in somebody else's shoes. If I were to comprehend the concept of walking in another man's shoes, what are the benefits of doing that? So, to begin with, what I did was I typed in walk in another man's shoes, and what I came up with, the idioms, there's this thing called Idioms, thefreedictionary.com. So I know about the dictionary, but now they have idioms where you could just put in a little phrase and it'll tell you what it actually means. And this one says to spend time trying to consider or understand another person's perspectives, experience, motivations before making judgment about them. So if I were to walk in someone else's shoes, it gives me the opportunity not to judge. Obviously, we can see, again, no-brainer here. I liked this one. There was a website that I stumbled across. I really liked it. Mind Fuel Daily. That's what it's called, Mind Fuel Daily. And it said, you can't understand someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. So they can't find the origin of this quote. It's been around forever, so they really can't figure out who said it. They do believe it's an American quote. But it's been an important part of our history, in our literacy, in our education. Philosophers have mentioned this. So it talks about the idea of implementing empathy to live a meaningful life. So when I have empathy for you, I don't judge you. So a couple of quotes that she had. One, I love this. I love the movie To Kill a Mockingbird. One of the first movies I ever saw as a little kid where I truly comprehended that movies had meanings. I mean, it wasn't just a Batman and Robin thing. I mean, it was like, wow. And so anyway, I saw the one with Atticus Finch. Gregory Peck, was that who it was? Gregory Peck? Anyway, this is the quote. If you can learn a simple trick, Scout, which was the daughter, you'll get along a lot better with other kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside of his skin and walk around in it. That was what he was telling his little daughter about Bo. Remember the guy that nobody really knew? He ended up saving her life. Sorry, spoiler alert. So Atticus Finch, this was To Kill a Mockingbird, which was written by Harper Lee. Then another one, whenever Marcus Aurelius, who was a philosopher, said, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one that I'm about to criticize? So, you know, this also goes with people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, is something along that lines too. So when I'm about to criticize, can I find it within myself? And if I do find it in myself, do I really want to criticize? Because I'm doing the same thing, which is always funny. I love how when you do as I say, don't do as I do. Don't criticize, and yet here we go, criticizing everyone. But don't criticize. My favorite story, I'm sure I've told you this before, my daughter, I was shopping with my daughter and her son, and he must have been about 2. And I'm an agitator with kids. I love to play with them and get them all riled up and then hand them back. So we were in Costco and I'm playing around with him and he reaches out and smacks me. He was playing and he smacked me, right? And so I kind of jumped back, and before I could say anything, my daughter goes, Marcellus, we don't hit people, and she's hit him. And I'm like, you just said we don't hit people and you hit him. And there was a woman that was walking the other way. She busted up laughing too, which then made my daughter laugh, and my grandson's like, everyone's laughing. So he just cracked up laughing and reached over to try to slap me again. It was funny. But that's what we're walking contradictions sometimes. We don't do this, and then we do what we say we won't do. So we all know not to judge, but we judge. Then I was very surprised, this is my age, but Elvis Presley actually had a song, Walk a Mile in My Shoes, which I was so surprised. The lyrics were written by, I want to make sure I get his name, Joe South was the one who wrote the lyrics. I want to just read these to you because these are phenomenal. These are just excerpts. If I could be you, if you could be me, I don't know the tune. You probably know it, but I don't know the tune. Where's your guitar, Dave? Okay, so if I could be you, if you could be me for just 1 hour, if we could find a way to get inside each other's minds, if you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I'd believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Walk a mile in my shoes before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Now there are people on reservations and out in the ghetto, and brother there, but the grace of God go I. If I only had the wings of a little angel, don't you know I'd fly to the top of the mountain, and then I'd cry, cry, cry. I think that, and then there's the repeating verse, walk in my shoes. That was beautiful, and that was, when was Elvis Presley famous?
50s.
In the
To the
50s.
60s.
So that's like 60, 70 years ago. I mean, that's phenomenal.
I remember that. Now that you recited it, I remember.
You remember that?
I can't remember the tune.
Was it a really popular song?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was maybe on an album.
That's great, though. And Elvis Presley, the guy shaking his hips, sings a beautiful song. Anyway, so when I read that, and then of course the other quotes, it came to me that I thought the idea that there's a common theme here, two common themes, judgment and empathy. And what's intriguing about judgment and empathy, you cannot have empathy if you judge, but you also cannot have judgment if you have empathy. They cancel each other out. So if I go for empathy, there's no judgment. If I go for judgment, there's no empathy. I don't think I've never made that connection before. Like, oh wow, it's either one or the other. You can't have both. Now I'm talking about the critical emotional judgment. I'm not talking about, is this too hot or too cold? I'm talking about the emotional judgment that we have of one another. We're so quick to judge. So most of us know the idea that judgment is forming an opinion, and we do it like that. I mean, we can look at someone, boom, that's it. I mean, it's amazing. We were driving up here tonight, and there was a gentleman, I'm guessing it was a gentleman in a very big, huge, souped-up, lifted pickup truck with a engine that goes, and we're on the freeway, and he's like zipping by and slamming on his brakes because there's traffic. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not going to judge him, I'm not going to judge him, I'm not. And finally I hear myself say, where does he think he's going to go? And that's a judgment, because I'm judging his driving and his showing off and whatnot. And then I thought, okay, if I can't have judgment, I want to switch that to empathy. Okay, maybe he's late. And then my husband goes, oh, maybe he's late for school, because we were just passing the Scottsdale community. I'm like, well, maybe his mom didn't love him when he was a kid and now he has to I don't know. But I would rather do that than go to but it was so funny. My first thought was, where do you think you're going, dude? Why are you driving like that? Like, that's the judgment. And so it was nice to see, and not nice, but nice to see that even me, my first reaction is, because that's what we do. We judge. We quickly judge to survey where do we fit, the pecking order, who's where, what my role is going to be. We do this when we get to work, who are the people I'm going to associate with. Unfortunately, there are the brown nosers who, they go for who's the most important. I know several people, they scan crowds. I don't know how to say this appropriately, but they look to see where the money is, and then that's where they go talk. Considering that everybody has a point of view, but not them, they got to go for the money, whoever's got the money. And then there's the people who talk the loudest, and when they're talking to you, they're looking to see who else is watching them, and then they talk louder because they want everyone else's attention, so you feel quite insignificant. But they're looking to see who's got to be the loudest voice. All of that happens instantly. You walk in a room, we instantly judge. And I'm not just talking about cold. It's, like I said, it's the idea of adjusting in our head. Where do I fit? Comparison is what comes into it. So that's the judgment. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the other idea, most of our judgment is critical, unfortunately, of other people. Most of our judgment is critical. It would be nice if we could say, oh, what a beautiful headband, and oh, that's a nice color blue, and oh, I like that shirt on you. But most of us don't deflect to that. The first thing we do is find what's wrong. You didn't do your hair today, or something so stupid or goofy. And it's funny, those imperfections are what stands out. It's those imperfections that stand out. Like, if you've ever met a woman who maybe the mascara has come down on her eye, maybe she was crying, or she blinked while she was putting it on, so you get the little dots, and that's all you see. So you're talking to them and you're looking at the mascara. Now, I'm the type of person who'll say, honey, your mascara is a little off, but sometimes people are too embarrassed to do that, so they don't say anything. They just, like that. But it's what your eye keeps going to. If you've ever met a person who had a very obscure mole somewhere on their face, it's so hard not to look at it, and then you think, I'm trying too hard not to look at it, so then you start, I'm looking at it too much, so then you look away. There was a really funny scene, Steve Martin in the movie with Daryl Hannah with the long nose. I forgot what the name of the movie is, but he had this super long nose. Do you remember that movie? It's actually based off Sir Bergerac or some Shakespearean play. But anyway, he has this really long nose, and everyone just, I mean, they overemphasized it. I'm not kidding. It was like Pinocchio's nose. It was this really long nose. And he talks about how it's so hypnotic, and he does this, and people's heads are going like this, back and forth, because you're focusing on it. But it's true. We find the imperfections, and we focus on them. Wouldn't it be nice if we can find the perfections and focus on those instead? So empathy, therefore, now this is a very long definition. I'm going to read it to you. Empathy, on the other hand, is defined as the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, of either the past or the present, without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objective, explicit manner. That was a mouthful. So what does it really mean? I feel you. I know what you're going through. You don't have to tell me the whole story. I get it. Somebody who's gotten through a heartbreak, totally get it. Somebody who's in an accident, totally get it. Because I identify. I've been in accidents. I've had heartbreak. Somebody who loses their job. Well, I've never been fired, so sorry. But somebody who moves to a new state. Yes, I get it. So we identify. That's what empathy is. We can identify. Now, there are some people who are empaths. Empaths, right? So me, I would say I'm an empath. I feel energy. I can feel when someone's sad or someone's happy. You who are empaths understand that. We can feel, and it affects us. As a sensitive, I just call myself sensitive. As a sensitive individual, it's difficult for me to be in crowds because there's too much going on. I can feel too much, I'm overloaded. It's harder for me. And this was something that my husband had to adjust to. When I walk into a room, I don't like to be the first one walking in. So as a gentleman, he holds the door open for me, and then I stand and wait for him to go first because I don't want to be the first one in. That's just an awkward thing for me. And it took him a while to adjust to that, but to me, it's my preference. It's too much of an energy shift. If I can follow him in, I'm not hit with the energy as much. Now, this doesn't happen all the time for me personally. It's happened enough for me to recognize it. So as an empath, it goes along with empathy. We feel and understand without having to know the whole story. I can look and see someone looks sad, something must have happened. Okay, and then it invokes empathy, means it invokes compassion from me. I don't judge. It's kind of like when you see a little kid who stumbles and hits the floor. They didn't hurt themselves, nothing broke, but they're hysterically crying. Why? Because something happened to them. So we have compassion. Oh, honey, you're okay. We kiss their little boo-boo, and it's amazing how a kiss on a boo-boo makes a kid instantly forget. Okay, off they go, and they're out playing out the door again. It's amazing. But little things like that, when we draw out the empathy, it affects people. It also affects people when we judge. We know this. You know what it's like to be judged when you walk in a room and someone is judging you. We understand that completely and totally. So both of these affect us. Now, I was thinking, I have a lot of movie references tonight, sorry. But the movie Avatar, has everyone seen that one? I love this movie. It's an animation, believe it or not. 2.5 hours long, totally worth it though. The idea is there's a planet called Pandora. The Navari are the natives or the beings that live on the planet. And they greet each other by saying, I see you. So I see you, meaning I see you. So everything is connected. They're very spiritually based. The plants, the trees, the animals, everything is connected. The God or entity they call, oh, it's got out of my head. Anyway, there's one entity that they believe that is the spirit of all things, and everyone is an expression of that. That's what I would say would be a very good example of empathy, because they feel one another. They feel. So as a matter of fact, the way it is everyone has this tail or something with little tendrils, and then you connect it to another tendril and you become one. So the warriors who ride the horses connect their little tendrils to the horse and they become one, and they don't have to give instructions. They just think, go, and the horse runs. So they are connected. I don't want to get into that. Maybe we'll play that movie. No, I'm kidding. But the whole concept is everything is connected as empathy. So it's the metaphor that everything on the planet is connected as well. How many people have said this? We're all one. The air circulates around the planet. It just doesn't stay here in the United States. So the air from the volcanoes are coming over here. When the last tsunami they had, Fukushima, the radiation didn't just stay over Japan. It affects the whole planet. The first one that we had was like the 3 Mile Island one, and then Chernobyl, of course. So we are all connected. Everyone is connected on the planet. Naturally, all the atoms are. So as a human race, we all have a deep inner connection to one another. We can feel pain, especially when it's a loved one. We know, oh, there's nothing like having somebody that you love and suffering, and there's nothing you can do. You feel helpless, but they're suffering. And you just sit and listen, and there's nothing you can do. So we feel, we're compassionate, and there are even men who have sympathy pains when their wife is in labor. So they're experiencing labor pains, even though they're not. So I knew a guy who actually would, when she got nauseous, he got nauseous. And I'd be like, well, you're just doing that because she's making. And he's like, no, I normally someone could throw up in front of me, it doesn't bother me. But when she got nauseous morning sickness, he would wake up with morning sickness too. It was very funny. They were connected to the hip. It was cute. So the question naturally would be, if we as human beings, as a race, have the ability to either do empathy and judgment, and we understand the implications of judgment, and we understand the implications of empathy, we have the ability to do both. Why do we continue to do judgment? Why is it, if we understand empathy and compassion and I can connect with an individual, the benefits of it, why don't I choose it? I think that's a great question. Why don't I choose empathy? Why do I default to judgment? Well, there's so much out there, and I didn't want to really source anyone else on this one. I kind of wanted to answer it myself. So for me, personally, I would say the reason why we choose judgment is because it's so much easier. It requires less time. Judge, boom, done. Empathy, okay, why is the person acting like the way they're acting? What's causing? It requires time and effort. And sometimes we just don't want to put in the time. We don't want to put in the effort. It's just easier to judge. Judge, boom, done, move on. And we think then we're judging that it doesn't affect us. George used to say to me early on, when I first came into this organization of facilitator training, he'd say, when you judge, you don't realize that everything you judge will come back to you. And you are creating a weight around you in your karma energy. You're creating this weight and you're carrying that judgment. So much so that you present an energy of judgment. When he said that, never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that I'm actually creating a field of judgment wherever I go. And he was the one who said, start paying attention to people. You can see who's positive and who's negative. Who are the people that are givers and who are the takers? Who are the ones that are judging and who are the ones that are compassionate? I would sit and people watch. He used to tell the story of how his teacher had told him to sit in a parking lot at the grocery store and come up with the level of 3 different human beings, the superhuman, human, and then subhuman, and he was offended. What do you mean by subhuman? But then his teacher explained what it was. Well, so George passed it on and said, go sit and watch, and you can observe. And sure enough, I begin to feel that person's judgmental. You can see it in their face. You can hear it in their voice. You can obviously hear it in the comments too. I'd love to do it. Like I traveled a lot, so I would be in the Starbucks line at some airport. And you can hear people in front, complain, I can't believe it. Or they're complaining about the service or having to travel back to their family. It would be sometimes quite suffocating, I guess would be the right word, if you're surrounded by judgment. And I'm certain those of you who've ever been in that, if you find yourself in a negative environment day in and day out, at work especially, it begins to drain you. And then you start taking on the negativity. You start becoming judgmental and critical of the people who are judgmental and critical, which is quite odd too. Oh, there's that person, they're going to judge again. So we could say, oh, there's a person, they have a a tendency to judge, but you know what? I'm grateful I have an opportunity to work with them so that it reminds me not to be judgmental. That's like a little trick that you can do, but we end up doing in absorbing our environment. So again, my answer to the question is, why do we default to judgment, is because it's so much easier. It's quicker, it doesn't require a lot of time. It's easier to pass judgment than to understand. And that's true. A lot of the times we have people who will go out to take a homeless person to lunch, or do an act of kind or service or kindness to the homeless people. And 9 times out of 10, they will come back and tell stories of these homeless people and how they ended up being on the street. It's not like somebody woke up one day and said, oh, I think I'll just be homeless. Every one of them has a story. And not all of them are connected to drugs and alcohol. We had this one gentleman who, he lost his wife and son in a car accident. And he just was so devastated. He lost his job, then couldn't have the bills in it. And before he knew it, he just was lifeless, devastated, and just gave up and just started to live on the street. He didn't want to tell his family or friends where he was. And that was his story, that it was this horrible act that just, his son died in his arms. And, how do you overcome things like that? So to me, I think a lot of the experiences people have, the traumas leave scars. They leave scars on people. And if we were attuned enough, we would be able to see the scars instead of the judgment. We would be able to recognize, oh, that person's in pain, or they've suffered. And not condone it. I'm not suggesting go be in a violent relationship and stay there because the significant other grew up in a violent, and I have compassion, I understand that's just because of the way he is. That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying that have compassion for it. Oh, he's acting this way or she's acting this way because of X, Y, and Z, and then take action from there. But to recognize it first rather than quickly go, oh, he's hot-tempered. Well, maybe something's going on. I know that last Wednesday night when I told the story of the young teenager and how he was rebellious and acting up, and I'm the one who knew the story and nobody else did. So here's the young kid whose mother dies of cancer. He's the only one there. It's her mom. It's his best friend. Father gets remarried, doesn't want to have 2 kids, gets rid of him and sends him to go live with a family member. So loses his mother, his father, and his family all in like 6 months. I totally get it. Why is he acting up? Nobody else gets that, and everyone sees him up and judges him quite quickly. So it requires effort and time, naturally. Now, did I let him do whatever he wanted to? Of course not. My job is to make sure he's learning how to adjust and deal and compensate and so on and so forth. So when we understand it, what we have is compassion, and we encourage people to process through their work. Here's the most important part. When you have empathy, it doesn't mean you go fix it. Empathy means I feel and I have compassion and understanding. But I also must recognize you have to be the one to fix it. If we continuously help and assist other people doing their thing, they won't learn anything. They become dependent upon us. I usually use the illustration in the classroom. If you hang on to the bicycle seat of your child when they're first learning how to ride a bike, that's what we do. We hold on and we run alongside. Once we take the training wheels off, we hold on, run alongside until they get their stability. And then we let go. And typically the kids will wobble, but they'll gain their sense of stability, or they'll fall and they pick it back up and try it again. If you never let go of the seat, will they ever learn? Of course not, because they've always got your stability there, so they actually don't develop the correct muscles. If we were to hold our children as they're walking, first learning how to walk, they will never learn how to the correct muscles. You have to let them go. Let them stand and fall and build their muscles on their own. Anyone who's ever been to a gym, you understand that. It's a repetitive motion. That's working out. It's repetitive motion. That's what builds our muscles, gives you the guns, as my son's working on right now, his guns. So it's the repetitive motion, resistance training as well. So we have to give them the opportunity to learn on their own, but it doesn't mean we have to be critical and judgmental. You moron, but we don't have to say that. It's like, how many times do I have to tell you, keep your feet on the pedals? You don't say that. Okay, honey, let's try it again. We encourage. We don't judge. It's encourage. It's intriguing to me how well, I would say probably mostly me, but I think most of human beings are this way. It's easy for us to have encouragement and compassion and understanding for children and animals, but when it gets to be another adult, I don't. Like what's wrong with you? Why don't you know that by now? Like I'm very critical easily to an adult, but child, oh, got it. With a child, oh, they're just learning. Wouldn't it be brilliant if we could recognize that each person is really just still a child, learning and developing on their own? You could be an 80-year-old child. As a matter of fact, many adults do revert back to their childhood when they get older. But if we can remember that, we might have a little bit more compassion. I'm speaking for myself. If I can remember everyone is still a child, not judging them as a child, I'll stop being childish, that's not what I mean. Remembering that everyone's still growing and learning, then I wouldn't really go for judgment. At least I'm hoping I wouldn't go for judgment on that. So once we have compassion and empathy, what does this mean? Well, let's suppose you have a woman who seems to be very distrusting, doesn't trust anybody. Well, if we have understanding and compassion, we discover that she had a husband that was unfaithful, devastated her, took everything from her, left her high and dry. So now she doesn't trust. Okay, I get it. So here's somebody who doesn't trust. So instead of me judging her for not trusting, I can understand. So when I'm interacting with her, when I'm working with her, I could say, okay, and explain things simply rather than just assume a blanket trust, because this person doesn't trust right away. I might have to work a little bit more on earning her trust than other people because she doesn't trust. So that requires a little bit more effort, a little bit more work. If I have a child who's constantly being lied to, which I had a kid, one of the kids in the teen program, lied. This kid, very skeptical, didn't believe a word anybody said, skeptical, you're lying. That's difficult when you're telling the truth and someone's telling you that you're lying, but you're telling the truth and they're telling you, it's easy to react to that one. How many times do I have to tell you? So what we have to remember is, okay, here's a person who's been lied to a great deal. So I operate in a way of, well, tell me what it would take for you to believe in me and come from that angle. So we work with the individual. A man who perhaps loses their mother or the mother leaves at an early age. When he's like 4 or 5, his mom abandons the family. So here's a guy now who has abandonment issues, especially with women. So we could judge them as, oh, you're a male chauvinist, or you don't like women, or we can judge him for that, or we could say, oh, abandonment issues. Again, a little bit more work, but what can I do to ensure that you know I'm not going to go anywhere? What can I do? How can I show you that this is solid? Of course, it's just words, and you never really can guarantee anything, but it requires an extra effort. Naturally, that's what we would say to them. So, as I mentioned, every tragedy leaves a scar. If I can recognize the scar and connect it back to what the tragedy is, then I have an opportunity to work with the empathy and the compassion. Again, this is understanding. It's kind of like when you have effective communication. I do programs on effective communication. Effective communication is not just choosing words. I'm articulate and I'm going to impress you with my vernacular acrobatic abilities. That's not what effective communication is. Effective communication is recognizing your audience and adjusting for them. That's effective communication. This happens in relationships as well. When you get into a relationship, there's many levels of communication. So it's not just words. There's tonality and facial expressions and body posture, as long as the words that we choose. So we could, for example, if I were to say, yeah, right, then I have a sarcastic tone. But if I go, yeah, right, then I'm excited. So our fluctuation in our voice adjusts. That is one way of communicating. Of course, the facial expressions and our tonality. So when most couples, when they get a struggle, we have to learn how to communicate. So they learn to listen. And what does listen mean? Oh, they could repeat back what the person said. So that's really just memory. That's not really listening. So I could sit here, and most people, when they first learn how to communicate, as a person's talking, their head is thinking, what am I going to say? Oh, hurry up, shut up, I want to tell you what I want to say. Or they just flat out interrupt you. So that's they just go and interrupt you. Because you're saying it wrong, you're not saying the right thing, I need to correct you, and boom. And interrupting is my biggest pet peeve. really struggle with people who interrupt me. My default is you interrupt me, I stop talking. I mean, that's just it. I just get so offended. I'm like, that's it. I can't. Anyway, so interrupting. Sorry, back to work. So that's the first thing we learned. Okay, so we don't interrupt. So we sit here, and the person's talking, and in my mind I'm going, but that's not right, but that's not right. Well, and I'm already adjusting it in my head. Oh, but I'm listening because I'm not interrupting. Well, that's not really listening. And then we learn to listen, meaning if you could repeat what the person just said. So we sit in our head and we think, okay, he just said, or she just said, if we can repeat the thing that we just said. And so we start memorizing what the person is saying. That's still not listening. It's one level. I mean, you're making an effort to communicate. But then there's the next level. Well, what are they really saying? Because, you know, most of the time what we really mean is in between the words. So then we have to figure out, well, what are they really trying to say? Or we can ask them, well, tell me what it is that you're really trying to say. So there's different styles. There's the people who tell you right away. Then there's the people who go into these long, exaggerated stories, which here's my other pet peeve. I'm so impatient. Just tell me. What do you need? I don't need to hear the history. Just tell me. Another pet peeve, sorry. I'm exposing myself tonight. I'm very judgmental. So I have the pet peeve, hurry, 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 let's get to it. So then I have to practice. Okay, this person needs to tell me everything because it's important to them. When I recognize that it's important to them to tell the story, then I will sit and I'll listen. One of my kids, he loves to give details. Details. And I sit there like, okay. But I remember this is him. He loves details, so okay, I'm going to listen. And I don't interrupt him. I let him tell me the details because it's so important to him. And I'm thinking, you know, he's a teenager. That's what we want. We want to support our kids and have their expression. There are some times where I've been in groups where people will interrupt and say, just get to the point. And even though I'm feeling it on the inside, I don't want to say that because you can see how it shatters the person. And then they're like, well, why do I even have to bother? And there are times when I ramble, I know that, but sometimes when I ramble, it's because I forgot what I was going to say, so I'm just filling in space. I used to do that a great deal. Now I just kind of go, what was I going to say? It's senior moments now. It doesn't bother me anymore. I forget what I was going to say. I'm in the kitchen. We're getting ready to leave. I'm walking back to the bedroom because there's something I forgot, and I literally just stand there like, what was I going to get? And my husband walks by and goes, did you forget something? I'm like, yeah. He walks away because he knows, yeah, she'll get it someday. And I did. I remembered what I want. But anyway, so when it comes to the understanding part and the listening part, it's for the other person. So when I'm practicing empathy, it's not for me. It's for the other person. When I'm judging, that's for me. When I judge, it's to make myself feel better, secure, whatnot. When I have empathy, it's to connect with an individual and support and encourage that person. So that's a great distinction right there. Empathy is of service. Judgment is of ego. It's selfish. So when I have empathy, I'm in service to people. When I'm judgmental, it's egotistical. It's all about me. I don't care about you. You're beneath me, whatnot, critical. And I'm talking again, the critical judgment that we do on one another. So when I think about walking in another person's shoes, it's having the perspective of walking in another person's shoes. Another great movie, Jamie Lee Curtis, it was a remake of Freaky Friday with Lindsay Lohan, I think it was. So her daughter, Lindsay Lohan is her daughter, and Jamie Lee Curtis. They're at odds. The father passed away, the mother's about to get remarried to another man, the daughter's like, ah. Well, so they have this argument, like, well, you don't know, and you don't know, and then they're at this fortune cookie, a Chinese restaurant, they have fortune cookies where their souls switch. So Jamie Lee Curtis finds herself in her daughter's body, and Lindsay Lohan finds herself in Jamie Lee Curtis's body. And it's very funny. They do a great job where the parent is seeing life through the teenager's eyes and the different world that the teenager grows up in. And the teenager gets to see the parent's life like, oh my gosh, responsibility, I have to pay for things, I'm held accountable for things, I have to make decisions. Like, it was really done very well. That's the best thing that I can think of when I think of stepping in each other's shoes. One of those stories like that. Again, that was called Freaky Friday. It was a remake. I don't remember the first one. But I love Jamie Lee Curtis, and she did such a great job. It was so believable. Jamie Lee Curtis really looked and acted like a teenager. It was so believable. It's fantastic. Anyway, that's the idea. If I could put on somebody else's skin, as Atticus said, put on someone else's skin, I would see what life was like for them. And the idea is not just so I can have another viewpoint, but so I can understand and have compassion for them. Instead of having that reaction, oh, you Scrooge. I mean, well, Christmas is coming around. The Scrooge, isn't that the name of the movie? The Christmas Carol. So it's the Scrooge. That's the dude. When you look at Ebenezer's life, you realize, oh, he suffered, and oh, he had loss of love, and oh, he didn't make choices, and oh, he went for the money. Like, we have an understanding, and that's what really brought Scrooge about when he realized his actions and how they were affecting. So he actually got to have empathy for himself, which is something we can do. Many times I will suggest to people to stop during your day, close your eyes, and just inventory. How do you feel? Are you feeling happy or sad? Are you tired, overwhelmed, excited, joyful, angry? Just how do you feel? Are you in service, or are you thinking about yourself? If we were to do that, that actually connects us back to having empathy for ourselves, because it is essential that we recognize that we are also another person on the planet. Am I reacting to someone? Oh, if I am, why? What is it about that person that's causing me an upset? Why am I reacting to that individual? Does it really matter? In the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? I was talking to a friend of mine this weekend, and we're talking about, I don't want to disclose too much. Let's say I have OCD, okay? And people around me who do not have OCD annoy me. Not annoy me, but it's in my space. And so when I have shared space and it's not organized the way I want it to be organized, it's frustrating. We could just say that. So I get frustrated. But then when I look at it in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? No, it doesn't. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I know that you've heard me tell this story. It's funny that there's a desk that we share, and there's a line where the two desks come together, and if his stuff comes over even just the corner of a page, I'm pushing it back. You're over the line. I'm not kidding. I really do this. So I actually sometimes take my piles of paper and leave it right at the edge of the line so he can't come over, because my stuff is there. So everything is all clear, but there's a pile right here, so he can't come over onto my side. It's very goofy. I'm a very goofy person. But when I have empathy, in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? No. So a corner of page is on my side, so what? I mean, it really got to a point, my son came in the room one day, and he picked up stuff off of my husband's chair. I went to put it on my clean desk, and I went, ah! It scared him. I was like, oh, honey, I'm sorry. I can hold that for you. But I'm like frightened. Don't touch my space. That's about me. That causes the judgment. But if it was empathy, I'd go, oh, he's looking for a place to sit. Okay, yeah, I can help. Like, I lacked the understanding of that moment. It was more about my space. Don't put your stuff in my space. So when we get attached to things, or we take things personal, someone looks at us the wrong way, someone raises their voice in a temperament that I don't appreciate, then I judge. But if I could stop and think, why is this person upset? In my business, when I talk to clients at work, oh, my manager, blah, 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 blah. Well, why is your manager acting that way? Do you think they're under pressure? Oh, I guess they are. Is their manager getting down on them? Oh, yeah, I guess. So when we start pulling it out, we realize, oh, I don't have to react to that person. They're just maybe having a bad day. Or, maybe they've got the pressure coming down, sell, or, get the numbers and metrics. And the business world is such a wonderful place to learn about human behavior and not get wrapped up into it. If we could actually take it out and not take things personal. It's hard, though, because if you think about it, sometimes people spend more time with the people they work with than their significant others, especially if you have to go to work dinners or meet with clients, or if you're traveling a lot, and they become your work family. And then, of course, we get attached to them, and it's easy to react to them because they're not acting the right way or they're saying something wrong and whatnot. So when I go back to the idea of walking in someone else's shoes, if I were to take the time, and not just for a second, I don't mean just looking for a moment, I mean really taking the time. If there are people that really do upset us or push our buttons, if I could use that word, what is it about them that pushes our buttons? And like Marcus Aurelius said, what is it about me that does the same thing? Do I push people's buttons? Oh, well, I know I do. But do we push people's buttons? What is it about me that's causing that reaction? Like, so there's that person, why are they, and then why am I reacting to them? If I understood compassion, I would never really have a reaction. And when I think about George, I remember his final years. George was one of the most compassionate people I've ever met. And everybody who walked away from him felt like they were his best friend. I mean, that's just how he made you feel. He was fully engaged. He was in your conversation. He really gave 100% of himself to you when you were talking to him. And they'd walk away feeling like, here's my best friend. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh, George and I, we're best friends. And I'm like, I'm taking care of the man I live with him, you're not. But okay. So there's that judgment part of me, whatever. So being around that amount of compassion was inspiring. And then when he got towards the end of his life, Parkinson's, the final stage of Parkinson's is dementia. And dementia, sometimes people get violent. Can you just imagine what it would be like to wake up and not know where you are, not know who the people are around you, and not have anything familiar? It can be very scary. I can understand that. There were times where he'd wake up and just fear was in his face. Grateful, I'm so grateful that he would only have bouts of it. He didn't just completely go. He'd come back. I think the longest one time he was like 2.5 hours gone, and then he'd come back, and he knew he had been gone. He knew because he recognized he was downstairs and eating and not where he started. Anyway, there were times where he got violent, very violent. He tried to throw me down the stairs a couple of times, or he took my arm and ranked it behind me. This is not George Adair. It's the disease. And once I put that connection, it's not George, it's the disease. And his caseworker came over one time, and he's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, and George was acting up, and I go, it's not George, it's the disease. My caseworker looked at me and he went, I wish more people would think of that, because they react to the person, and you yell back at the person, blah, 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 or we correct them immediately. That's not where you are, you're here. Okay, like he'd say, oh, why are you keeping from my home? This is your home. Well, I wouldn't correct him. Eventually I get to the point, well, tell me where you want to go and we can go. Or he'll say, he'll want to see a friend that has been dead for 20 years. You know what, I think they're working. And you work with that so that they don't get upset and frightful. And typically when you have an aggressive individual, my experience was when he got aggressive and I went along with whatever he was experiencing, he calmed down. It was the fear that was causing the upset, so I would go along with it. Okay, you want to go to West Virginia? We can go. We can go. Let's go. Get him in the car. 9 times out of 10, by the time we're in the car, he's back and he wants to get back in the house. Okay, great. We'll go back in the house. So it just requires effort and time. Again, that requires time. If I were judgmental, I would have been, that's it. I'm done. I don't want to take care of you anymore. How many times do you want to tell me? And that's pretty much what it looks like when we get judgmental and critical. So the idea, like with people, elderly, I know a lot of people are handling this now with our elders, the dementia and the upset and the frustration and the violence, we can't react to them. It requires to find a place of peace within ourselves. Now I know one of the saving graces for me was that the caseworker actually did have people that would come and relieve my time. So I would get to go and they'd have somebody else come and watch, and I'd have like an hour or two to do things that I needed to do or do trainings and whatnot. So having that breakaway was good too. So I think that sometimes that's necessary as well when I'm having the struggles to break away. When I need a moment. And just back away and take a break. Say, let me get back to you on that. Or, oh, I'm really being critical here. Let me take myself out and recognize it. I have a couple of situations in my life where I get drawn into emotionally, because I want to protect people. Loyalty is a big thing for me, and I want to protect the ones that I love or protect the ones that I feel like are being taken advantage of. And I find myself, within the last month or two, I find myself being drawn into the drama. And I have to remind myself, okay, not my battle. And I'll hear myself going, oh my gosh, really? Is that what? And then I think, okay, not my battle. And it requires a great deal of effort for me to do this because I want to protect, naturally. Don't take advantage of her. And, okay, not my battle. They're not asking for my assistance. They're just downloading. I'm here to listen. Okay, not my battle. It's hard at times. It really is, you know. Don't say that about him. Okay, not my battle. Like I have to remind myself that, and especially since the holidays are coming around. We had a funny thing happen this Thanksgiving. We didn't get invited anywhere. And typically we do Thanksgiving. And last year, everyone that was supposed to come didn't. They were sick, had to run to the emergency. I take that back. Our kids came, but their mom had changed their time, so the mom's time was like literally half an hour after ours, so they didn't hardly eat anything. So we had this big old spread. Nobody ate anything. Tons of food. My husband went and took the food over to the people who were sick and whatnot. So I spent my last year Thanksgiving 3 hours cleaning up, cooking, and then cleaning. And we said, that's it, I'm not doing it this year. So this year we didn't do any Thanksgiving. We told everyone we weren't going to do Thanksgiving. We didn't get invited anywhere. 2 days before Thanksgiving, we have somebody who does invite us. Well, then the night before, she calls and needs to renegotiate it because her son got injured. I'm like, what is it with people around the holidays? So we ended up celebrating Thanksgiving on Saturday. So here we are, Thanksgiving night. I have a tradition. I watch the movie Miracle on 34th Street. Every Thanksgiving, I've been doing it ever since I've been on my own. So we're watching this movie, eating popcorn. I'm on the phone with my dad. He's like, what do you do? I'm like, eating popcorn. He goes, on Thanksgiving? I go, yeah, this is our turkey. Now, leading up to this moment, I'm in the back of my head going, all the years that I've invited people for Thanksgiving, I cannot believe nobody has invited us. All the years, my girls and whatnot, nobody has invited. What, in the back of my head, this is rambling. And then I have to remember, all right, Anne-Marie, they all have families, they've got significant others, there's family, they have kids of their own, I'm not the top priority anymore. Like, you have to talk, I had to talk myself out. But it was there, I knew it was there. Until, I want to say it was Thanksgiving morning. We sat and watched the Thanksgiving Day parade together, which we haven't ever done. I grew up watching the parade. I'm from New York. That's what you did. In Arizona, it's not a big deal, unless you have somebody in the family who's playing in the band over there. So we did. And when we were watching the parade, I'm sitting there crying because it's reminding me of watching the parade and the smells of New York and family. And then I've actually been at the parade twice. I didn't go to the parade until I left New York and came to Arizona, and then I would go back with my friends and family, and that's when we'd be at the parade. But I've been to the parade twice. It's freezing. There's lots of people. But anyway, I've done it twice. So I was watching the parade, and I thought to myself, you know what? Thanksgiving it's about who you're with and what you're thankful for. I'm so grateful for my husband and my family, and I don't need to be with them to feel grateful for them or feel love. And that's kind of when like, I'm grateful that they've all gone on. That's what I want. What would you want for your family? For them to have families of their own and start their own traditions. That's great. So it was Thanksgiving morning when I was sitting there, and I really released any judgment I had. Without judgment, we have empathy. They cannot exist together. So the concept is choose. What would be your choice? So if I can challenge you for the month of December, I'm going to challenge you to see how many times you could stop your judgment and flip it to empathy, especially with the holiday shoppers. Stop your judgment and flip it to empathy. So I'm curious to hear how you guys do for the month of December. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you everyone for watching us online. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on the 19th for our Wednesday night workshop, The Pros and Cons of Desire. Have a wonderful night and happy holidays.